Are you alone? Good. Let the darkness in, and if you enjoy what you hear, leave a like and subscribe for more. Tell us what you think in the comments below. 5 real glitch in the Matrix stories that still can't be explained. Story 1: The Duplicate Man. I still remember the exact moment my reality fractured. It was a Tuesday morning in March 2019, and I was running late for my shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse in Portland, Oregon. The coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Morrison had become my ritual stop every morning for the past 3 years. I knew the baristas by name, knew the regulars, knew the creak of the door and the smell of burned espresso that somehow made everything feel normal. That morning, I pushed through the glass door at exactly 7:23 a.m. I know the time because I checked my phone, calculating whether I could still make it to work without getting written up. The shop was moderately busy, maybe 7 or 8 people scattered at tables, the usual morning crowd. I got in line behind a man in a gray business suit, charcoal really, with thin pinstripes that caught the light. He had distinctive salt and pepper hair, styled back with what looked like too much gel, and he was talking on his phone in a low, irritated voice about some contract dispute. I remember thinking he looked stressed, the way he kept adjusting his tie, the way his jaw clenched. He ordered a large black coffee, no room, paid with a credit card, and walked toward the back of the shop where the bathrooms were. I watched him go because there was something aggressive about the way he moved, like he was fighting with the air itself. Then I ordered my usual vanilla latte, paid, and moved to the pickup counter. That's when I saw him again. The same man. Same charcoal suit with pinstripes. Same salt and pepper hair. Same tense jaw. He was walking in through the front door, phone pressed to his ear, having the exact same conversation about a contract dispute. Word for word. The same cadence, the same pauses, the same irritated sigh. I felt my stomach drop. I looked toward the back of the shop where the first man had gone, then back at the door where this man was entering. They were identical. Not similar. Not twins. Identical in every microscopic detail, down to the way they held their phones, the angle of their head, the slight scuff on their left shoe. My hands started shaking. The barista called my name, but I couldn't move. I watched as the second man got in line, watched as he stood in the exact same position where the first had stood moments ago, watched as he made the same adjustment to his tie with the same hand motion. The woman ahead of him ordered, and then it was his turn. Large black coffee, no room. Same credit card motion, same signature on the digital screen. And then he walked toward the back, following the exact path the first man had taken. I don't know what made me follow him. Maybe it was the nurse in me, the part that's trained to investigate when something is medically wrong. Maybe it was pure human curiosity mixed with terror. I wove through the tables, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, and I'd push open the door to the hallway where the bathrooms were. Empty. Both bathroom doors were open, lights off, completely vacant. There was a back exit, but it had an alarm bar that would have sounded if anyone had pushed through. The alarm was silent. I stood in that narrow hallway, smelling the chemical lavender of industrial cleaner, staring at empty space where 2 identical men should have been. I went back to the main area of the coffee shop, my legs weak. I approached the barista, a girl named Sophie who I'd chatted with dozens of times. "Hey, did you see that man in the gray suit? The one who just ordered?" She looked at me blankly. "Which one? We get lots of business suits in the morning. The one who just ordered a black coffee. Like 2 minutes ago." Sophie's face crinkled in confusion. "You mean you? You're the last person I helped. Before that it was the lady with the red coat." She pointed to a woman sitting by the window. I pulled out my phone and showed her my transaction history. My latte was there, timestamped 7:24 a.m. But I'd been standing at the pickup counter for at least 3 minutes after ordering, watching both men. Sophie's last transaction before mine was at 7:19 a.m., a completely different order. "Are you feeling okay?" Sophie asked, her voice dropping to that concerned tone people use when they think you're having a medical emergency. I told her I was fine, grabbed my latte, and left. but I wasn't fine. I drove to work on autopilot, my hands tied on the steering wheel, replaying what I'd seen. Had I hallucinated? Was I having some kind of stroke? At 32, it was unlikely but not impossible. I started mentally checking myself for neurological symptoms: weakness on one side, vision problems, speech difficulties. Nothing. At work, I pulled my friend Marcus aside during lunch break. Marcus was a psychiatrist who worked in the behavioral health unit. I told him everything, expecting him to suggest I book a CT scan or refer me to neurology. Instead, his face went pale. "What?" I asked. "What is it?" Marcus set down his sandwich. "How much detail do you remember about this man?" "Everything. The suit, the hair, the phone call, the way he moved." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Then he said, "About 6 years ago, when I was doing my residency in Boston, I had a patient who came in the ER convinced that he was in the They'd seen the same person twice, simultaneously, in different parts of the grocery store. Not twins. The same person, wearing the same clothes, doing the same action in 2 places at once." The hair on my arm stood up. "What was wrong with them?" "Nothing. We ran every test available. Brain scans, blood work, psychological evaluations. Completely healthy. No drugs in their system, no alcohol, no history of mental illness or hallucinations. We kept them for observation for 3 days. During that time, 2 other staff members reported seeing similar things. Different people, different locations, but the same phenomenon, duplicates. What did you conclude?" Marcus looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, something between fear and fascination. "We didn't. We couldn't. There was no medical explanation. The attending physician buried the case in the archives because he didn't want to deal with the implications. But I've never forgotten it." I thought about this constantly for weeks afterward. I researched similar experiences online and found hundreds of accounts. People seeing duplicate strangers, duplicate loved ones, even duplicate versions of themselves. Some called it a glitch in the Matrix, a term from that movie, suggesting we live in some kind of simulation where the code occasionally malfunctions. Others called it timeline overlap, parallel dimensions momentarily intersecting. I didn't know what to call it. I just knew what I'd seen. 3 months later, I stopped going to that coffee shop. Not because I was afraid of seeing the duplicate man again, but because I was afraid I wouldn't. Because if it never happened again, I could convince myself it was a one-time neurological blip, a misfiring of neurons that created a false memory or hallucination. But I knew the truth. I knew, with the certainty of someone who's been trained to observe and remember, that I'd seen something impossible. 2 identical men, existing simultaneously, behaving identically, and then vanishing as if they'd never existed at all. Sometimes I still drive past that coffee shop. I don't go in, but I look through the window, watching the morning crowd, wondering if anyone else in there is seeing something they can't explain. Wondering if reality is as solid as we pretend it is, or if it's more like a screen with occasional dead pixels, moments where the image doubles and we catch a glimpse of the machinery underneath. The worst part isn't the fear or the confusion. The worst part is the knowing. Once you've seen behind the curtain, even for a moment, you can't unsee it. You walk through the world differently, waiting for the next moment when everything fractures again, when the rules stop making sense, when you're reminded that maybe, just maybe, none of this is as real as it feels. I still work at the same hospital. I still see Marcus occasionally, and sometimes we talk about that day, about his patient in Boston, about the cases that don't fit into neat diagnostic boxes. Neither of us has an answer. We've both just accepted that there are cracks in the world, and sometimes, if you're unlucky or lucky enough, you get to see through them. The duplicate man never showed up again. But I haven't stopped looking for him. Story 2: The Highway That Doesn't Exist. I need to tell you about something that happened to me in the summer of 2017. Something that I've only told 3 other people because every time I talk about it, I sound insane. But I know what happened. I was there. And the fact that I can't prove it, that there's no evidence it ever existed, makes it so much worse. My name is David, and at the time, I was 28 years old, working as a freelance photographer based out of Denver, Colorado. I just finished a wedding shoot in a small town called Salida, about 2.5 hours southwest of Denver, up in the mountains. Beautiful place, the kind of scenic Colorado town that looks like it belongs on a postcard. The wedding had run late, the reception even later, and by the time I'd packed up all my equipment and said my goodbyes, it was nearly midnight. I wasn't worried about the drive. I'd done it 100 times, knew Highway 285 like the back of my hand. It's a straight shot north through the mountains, past Buena Vista, through the town of Fairplay, and then down into the Denver metro area. In summer, with no snow or ice, it's an easy drive even at night. I had a full tank of gas, a thermos of coffee, and a playlist ready to go. I pulled out of Salida at 11:47 p.m. I remember checking the time because I was calculating when I'd get home, whether I'd be able to grab a few hours of sleep before I had to start editing photos. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky, and that way they only appear when you're far from city lights. The temperature had dropped to a comfortable 60 degrees, and I had my windows down, letting the mountain air fill the car. The first hour was normal. I passed through Buena Vista, saw the scattered lights of houses tucked into the hillsides, drove past the closed gas stations and dark storefronts. Traffic was almost non-existent, just me and the occasional semi-truck hauling goods through the night. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the white lines on the asphalt, the reflective signs marking curves and speed limits. Then, about 40 minutes past Buena Vista, I saw the exit. It wasn't marked on any of the usual green highway signs. Instead, there was a simple white sign, barely visible, that read, "Alternate Route 285. Below it, in smaller letters, Fairplay 32 miles. I'd never seen this exit before, and I'd driven this highway countless times over the past 5 years. But I was tired, and the sign said it led to Fairplay, which was directly on my route home. I figured maybe it was a newer alternate route, something built to ease congestion or bypass construction, though I hadn't heard about any major road work in the area. Without thinking too hard about it, I took the exit. The road immediately felt different. The asphalt was smooth, almost too smooth, newer than the main highway. But there were no streetlights, no reflective markers along the sides, just solid darkness pressing in from both edges. My headlights seemed dimmer somehow, not reaching as far as they should have. The trees on either side were dense, closer to the road than I was used to, their branches creating a tunnel effect overhead. I drove for 10 minutes, then 15. No other cars. No buildings. No signs indicating how far to Fairplay or any other landmark. Just endless dark road unwinding ahead of me, curve after curve through the forest. I started to feel uneasy, that creeping sensation in your gut when you realize something is off but you can't quite identify what. I checked my phone to pull up GPS. No signal. Not unusual in the mountains, but still unsettling. The GPS showed my blue location dot sitting on Highway 285. Nowhere near any alternate route. According to my phone, I was still on the main highway, approaching Fairplay from the normal direction. But I knew I'd taken that exit. I'd seen the sign. I'd felt the car turn. 20 minutes. 25. The road kept going, winding through the mountains, and I started to actively panic. I should have reached something by now, some intersection or town or at least another sign. But there was nothing. Just trees and darkness, and this impossibly smooth road that seemed to go nowhere. I slowed down, looking for a place to turn around, but the road had no shoulders. The trees pressed right up against the asphalt on both sides, so thick that turning around would mean a complicated three-point turn on a road I didn't know, in complete darkness, with no idea if another car might come around the curve behind me. So I kept driving. At the 30-minute mark, I started seeing things in my peripheral vision. Movement in the trees, shapes that might have been animals or might have been shadows playing tricks on my exhausted mind. Once, I swore I saw a figure standing just off the road, perfectly still, watching me pass. But when I looked directly at it, there was nothing there. The radio, which had been playing my playlist through my phone's Bluetooth, suddenly cut out. Not to static, just to silence. Complete, absolute silence. I couldn't even hear my engine anymore, couldn't hear my tires on the road. It was like driving through a vacuum, and the wrongness of it made my skin crawl. I pressed the gas pedal, speeding up to 60, then 70, desperate to get through this stretch of road and back to something familiar. The curves became sharper, and I had to brake hard to navigate. My hands sweating in the steering. The headlights flickered once, twice, and my heart nearly stopped at the thought of being stranded here in complete darkness. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it ended. I came around a curve and saw lights ahead. Real lights, the orange glow of street lamps, the lit windows of buildings. I nearly cried with relief. As I got closer, I saw it was 𝒉𝒄𝒄𝒄, the small mountain town I'd been trying to reach. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, a 24-hour place, and parked under the fluorescent lights, my hands shaking. I checked my phone. The time was 1:52 a.m. I'd been driving for 2 hours and 5 minutes since leaving 𝒍𝒆𝒂𝒓. But according to my calculations, even with the alternate route, I should have only been driving for about an hour and 40 minutes. I'd lost 25 minutes somewhere on that dark road. I went inside the gas station, needing to see other people, to confirm I was back in the real world. The clerk was a kid, maybe 19, playing on his phone behind the counter. I asked him about the alternate route, the exit off 285. He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "There's no alternate route, man. 285 runs straight through. Has for decades." I insisted. Described the sign, the smooth asphalt, the tunnel of trees. He shook his head, said I must be thinking of a different highway, maybe I'd gotten turned around. But I knew I hadn't. I'd seen that sign. I'd driven that road. I bought a coffee I didn't drink and got back in my car. I pulled up Google Maps, zoomed in on the stretch of highway between Buena Vista and 𝒉𝒄𝒄𝒄, looking for any indication of an alternate route. Nothing. Just the main highway, exactly as it had always been. I drove the rest of the way home in a daze, watching the clock obsessively, making sure time was passing normally. I got back to Denver at 3:40 a.m., parked in my apartment complex, and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to make sense of what had happened. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I searched online for reports of alternate routes on Highway 285, for stories of people getting lost in that area. I found nothing. I drove back to Salida the following weekend, in daylight this time, specifically looking for that exit. I drove slowly, checking every mile marker, every turnoff. It wasn't there. Where I remembered seeing the white sign, there was just solid forest, no break in the trees, no road leading away from the highway. I even stopped in 𝒉𝒄𝒄𝒄 and asked around. At a local diner, I talked to an old man who'd lived there his entire life, who knew every road and trail in the area. He'd never heard of any alternate route. He said Highway 285 was the only way through, had been since it was built in the 1950s. But I know what I experienced. I drove for over 30 minutes on a road that doesn't exist, through a forest that felt wrong, in a silence that shouldn't be possible. I lost time that I can't account for. And the worst part is, I have no evidence. No photos, no dashcam footage, nothing but my own memory of something impossible. I still take Highway 285 for work sometimes. I always watch for that exit, that white sign, hoping and dreading that I'll see it again. Part of me wants proof that I'm not crazy, that what I experienced was real. But another part of me, the part that remembers that unnatural silence, and those shapes in the trees, hopes I never find it again. Because if I do, I don't know if I'll come back the same way. Or if I'll come back at all. There are places in this world that shouldn't exist, roads that lead nowhere and everywhere at once. I found one. And it found me. And I still don't know which one of us was more lost. Story 3. The Woman Who Kept Dying. My name is Rebecca, and I watched the same woman die 4 times in the span of 2 weeks. I'm a paramedic, Have been for 11 years, working out of Seattle, Washington. I've seen a lot of death in my career, more than most people see in a lifetime. I've learned to compartmentalize, to process trauma, to keep moving forward. But nothing in my training prepared me for what happened in October 2020. It started on a Wednesday night, October 7th, around 11:30 p.m. We got a call for a single vehicle accident on Aurora Avenue North, near the zoo. Car versus tree, driver unresponsive. My partner Jake and I arrived within 6 minutes, fire department already on scene working to extract the driver from a mangled Honda Civic that had wrapped itself around an old oak tree. The driver was a woman, mid-30s, blonde hair matted with blood, wearing a green jacket and jeans. The impact had been severe, driver's side taking the brunt of it. We could see immediately it was bad. Once they got her out, we started working, but her injuries were catastrophic. Severe head trauma, internal bleeding, multiple fractures. We did everything we could, ran the protocol, but she coded in the ambulance. We worked her for 30 minutes, but she was gone. Time of death, 12:47 a.m., October 8th. I remember her face clearly. She had a small scar above her right eyebrow, a silver ring on her left index finger shaped like a vine, and a tattoo on her wrist that looked like a semicolon. These details matter. You'll understand why. We filled out the paperwork, turned her body over to the medical examiner, and went back into service. It was a hard call, but it was done. Jake and I grabbed coffee, didn't talk much about it. You learn not to dwell. You move on to the next call, the next person who needs help. 3 days later, October 11th, Sunday afternoon, we got called to a drowning at Golden Gardens Park. Woman pulled from the water by bystanders, not breathing. We arrived to find CPR in progress, a crowd of people standing around in wet clothes, crying and shouting. The woman was on the beach, soaked, her lips blue, no pulse. I knelt down to take over compressions, and my hands froze. It was her. The same woman from the car accident. Same face, same scar above the right eyebrow, same vine ring on her left index finger. Same semicolon tattoo on her wrist. She was even wearing the same green jacket, somehow dried despite being pulled from the water. I looked at Jake, but he was already setting up the airway, hadn't noticed. My mind was screaming that this was impossible, but my training kicked in. We worked her for 40 minutes. Advanced drugs, shock. She'd been under too long, her brain without oxygen for too many minutes. Time of death, 3:22 p.m., October 11th. In the ambulance afterward, I pulled Jake aside. Did you recognize her? He looked at me confused. From where? From Wednesday night. The car accident on Aurora. That was the same woman. Jake's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, checking the photos we'd taken for documentation on Wednesday. Standard protocol, we photograph major trauma scenes. He compared them to the photos from the drowning. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on him before, something between horror and disbelief. That's impossible, he whispered. She died. We pronounced her. She's in the morgue. I know what I saw, Jake. Same woman. Identical. We reported it to our supervisor when we got back to the station. She listened, pulled up both incident reports, compared descriptions. Same height, same approximate age, same physical characteristics. But different names. The car accident victim was listed as Jennifer Hartwell. The drowning victim was listed as Michelle Torres, ID found in her jacket pocket. Our supervisor suggested it was a coincidence, maybe relatives, maybe we were exhausted and seeing patterns that weren't there. But I knew. I'd seen thousands of faces in my career. I didn't make mistakes like this. 4 days later, October 15th, Thursday evening, we got called to a construction site in Ballard. Woman fell from scaffolding, approximately 30 feet. When we arrived, she was on the ground, construction workers standing around her, one of them crying, saying she just slipped, fell backward, hit the concrete. I saw her before we even got out of the ambulance. Green jacket. Blonde hair. And when I got close enough to check for a pulse, I saw the scar above her right eyebrow, the vine ring, the semicolon tattoo. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the stethoscope. Jake saw my face and immediately understood. He looked down at the woman, then back at me, his own face draining of color. "No," he said. Just that one word. But yes. It was her again. Same woman, third time. Massive head trauma from the fall, died at the scene before we could even get her loaded. Time of death, 7:04 p.m., October 15th. This time, I took my own photos on my personal phone. Detailed shots of her face, her hands, the tattoo, the ring. I documented everything. When we got back to the station, I didn't tell our supervisor. Instead, Jake and I drove to the medical examiner's office. We asked to see the body from October 8th, Jennifer Hartwell from the car accident. The me on duty looked at us strangely but pulled up the records. Jennifer Hartwell had been cremated on October 10th at the request of her next of kin, a brother in California. "What about Michelle Torres?" I asked. "Drowning victim from October 11th? He checked. Michelle Torres had been claimed by family and buried on October 14th at Evergreen Cemetery. "Can you show us photos from the autopsy files?" Jake asked. Then he hesitated, but we convinced him it was related to an ongoing investigation. He pulled up the digital files on his computer. Jennifer Hartwell, photographed during autopsy. It was her. And Michelle Torres, photographed during her autopsy. Same woman. Same face. Same identifying marks. "How is this possible?" Jake asked, but the me just shook his head, unable to provide an answer. The woman from the construction site was identified as Lisa Chen, a structural engineer. Next of kin, a husband in Tacoma. 3 women, 3 different identities, 3 different lives, 3 different families claiming their bodies. All with the same face, the same scar, the same ring, the same tattoo. All dead within a week and a half of each other. I couldn't sleep. I spent hours online, searching for any connection between the 3 women. No social media connections, no shared employers, no overlapping addresses. Jennifer Hartwell worked in marketing. Michelle Torres was a teacher. Lisa Chen was an engineer. They lived in different neighborhoods, had different backgrounds, different everything. Except they were the same person. The 4th time was October 17th, Saturday night. House fire in Greenwood. Woman trapped on the 2nd floor, overcome by smoke. We pulled her out, tried to resuscitate her, but the smoke inhalation was too severe. She died at Harborview Medical Center at 2:33 a.m. on October 18th. Green jacket, still somehow intact despite the fire. Scar above the right eyebrow. Vine ring. Semicolon tattoo. Her name was Amanda Price, a graphic designer. I broke protocol. I contacted all 4 families separately, told them I was a paramedic who'd responded to their loved one's death, and had some follow-up questions. I met with Jennifer Hartwell's brother, Michelle Torres' sister, Lisa Chen's husband, and Amanda Price's mother. I showed them all the photos on my phone, photos of all 4 women. Each family member confirmed that was their loved one, no doubt about it. But none of them recognized the other 3 photos. They'd never seen these other women before, had no explanation for why they looked identical. I asked about the ring, the tattoo, the scar. Each family had different stories. Jennifer got her scar from a bike accident as a teenager. Michelle got hers from a car accident in college. Lisa had hers from childhood, falling off playground equipment. Amanda got hers from a domestic violence incident years ago. The ring was an heirloom for one, a gift for another, a personal purchase for the third, a craft fair find for the fourth. The semicolon tattoo had different meanings: mental health awareness, a tribute to a lost friend, a literary reference, a reminder of survival. 4 different women with 4 different lives, all somehow inhabiting the same physical form, all dying within 10 days of each other. Jake and I tried to report it officially, but we were shut down. Our supervisor said we were experiencing trauma-induced pattern recognition, seeing connections where none existed. The department psychologist wanted us to take time off, suggested we were burnt out. The ME's office refused to discuss it further, cited patient privacy laws. After Amanda Price, there were no more. No fifth woman with that face, that scar, that ring, that tattoo. It just stopped, as suddenly as it had started. I left the paramedic service 6 months later. Jake left even sooner, moved to another state, and we don't talk anymore. I work as a medical administrator now, safe behind a desk where I don't have to see bodies, don't have to watch people die. But I still have the photos on my phone. For women who were the same woman, who weren't the same woman, who died 4 separate deaths and left 4 separate families mourning. I have documentation, evidence, proof that something impossible happened. And yet, I have no explanation. No theory that makes sense. Were they clones? Were they alternate versions from parallel timelines somehow collapsing into this one? Was it something supernatural, something beyond our understanding of how reality works? I don't know. All I know is that I watched the same woman die 4 times, that reality bent around her in ways that shouldn't be possible, and that somewhere, somehow, the rules we think govern existence failed completely. Sometimes I wake up at night, convinced I'm going to get called to another scene, that I'll find her again, that 5th death, that 6th, that it will keep happening forever. But so far, silence. Just the memory of 4 bodies, 4 families, and 1 face that shouldn't have existed 4 times over. The universe glitched, and I was there to witness it. And I've spent every day since trying to forget what I saw, knowing I never will. Story 4: The Grocery Store Loop. I'm going to tell you about the 37 minutes I lived over and over again, and how I'm still not entirely sure I ever escaped them. My name is Michael, I'm 41 years old, and I'm a high school math teacher in Austin, Texas. I tell you my profession because I want you to understand that I'm a rational person, someone who deals in logic and patterns, someone who doesn't believe in things that can't be explained by mathematics or science. Until February 14th, It was Valentine's Day, a Sunday evening around 6:15 p.m. I'd spent the day at home alone, not dating anyone at the time, and I realized I was out of groceries. I decided to make a quick run to the H-E-B on Hancock Drive, about 10 minutes from my apartment. It was a store I'd been to hundreds of times over the 5 years I'd lived in the area. I knew the layout, knew where everything was, could navigate it in my sleep. I parked in my usual spot, 3rd row from the entrance, grabbed a shopping cart from the corral, and walked in through the automatic doors. The store was moderately busy, typical for a Sunday evening. Families doing their weekly shopping, couples buying ingredients for romantic dinners, single people like me just picking up essentials. I grabbed a hand basket instead of a cart, planning to make it quick. I needed milk, bread, eggs, some fruit, maybe a frozen pizza. Standard bachelor fare. I started in the produce section, selected a few apples and a bunch of bananas, checked them for ripeness. Nothing unusual. Everything normal. Then I walked toward the dairy section at the back of the store. I passed a woman with a red coat pushing a cart with a crying toddler. I passed an elderly man examining pasta sauce labels. I passed a store employee restocking the cereal aisle, a kid maybe 19 with headphones in, nodding to music I couldn't hear. I got to the dairy section, opened the glass door, and reached for a gallon of whole milk. As my hand closed around the plastic handle, the lights in the store flickered. Just once, barely noticeable. And I felt something strange, like a slight pressure change, the way your ears pop when you change elevation quickly. I grabbed the milk, closed the refrigerator door, and turned around to head toward the bread aisle. And I was back in the produce section. I was standing exactly where I'd been 3 minutes earlier, hand reaching for the apples, as if I'd just entered the store. My basket was empty. The milk I'd been holding was gone. I looked around, confused, thinking maybe I'd spaced out, walked back without realizing it. But I hadn't. I remembered selecting the fruit, walking to the back, reaching for the milk. I remembered all of it. I checked my watch, 6:18 p.m. The same time it had been when I first walked to the produce section. My heart started beating faster. I looked down at the apples in front of me, the same ones I'd just examined. I looked around the store and saw the woman in the red coat, crying toddler in her cart, entering the produce section from the front. The same woman I'd passed minutes ago. The elderly man was in the exact same position by the pasta sauce. The employee was restocking the same cereal boxes. I stood there for a moment, trying to rationalize what was happening. Maybe I had spaced out. Maybe I'd been so tired or distracted that I'd imagined walking to the dairy section. I decided to try again, to prove to myself that everything was normal. I skipped the produce section this time, walked directly toward the dairy section at the back. I passed the woman in the red coat. I passed the elderly man. I passed the employee with headphones. Everything exactly as before, their positions identical, their movements synchronized to some script I couldn't see. I got to the dairy section, opened the glass door, reached for the milk. My fingers touched the cold plastic handle. The lights flickered. I was back in the produce section. Basket empty. Watch showing 6:18 p.m. The terror that hit me was immediate and absolute. This wasn't spacing out. This wasn't a memory lapse. Something was wrong with time itself, with the fabric of reality in this store. I was stuck in a loop, repeating the same few minutes over and over. I tried different approaches. I ran through the store, sprinting toward the exit. Made it halfway before the lights flickered and I was back in produce. I walked backward through the entire store. Lights flickered at the dairy section, reset. I grabbed items randomly, threw them in my basket, tried to change the pattern. Didn't matter. Every time I reached the dairy section, every time I touched that milk container, the loop reset. I started counting. 5 loops. 10 loops. 15. Each time, the exact same people in the exact same positions doing the exact same things. The woman's toddler crying the same cry. The elderly man picking up the same pasta sauce jar. Examining it, putting it back. The employee restocking the same boxes of Cheerios, nodding to the same beat. They were all trapped with me, but they didn't know it. They had no memory of the resets, no awareness that they'd done these same actions dozens of times. I was the only one who remembered, the only one experiencing the full horror of repetition. I tried talking to people. Grabbed the woman in the red coat, told her we were stuck in a time loop, begged her to help me. She looked at me like I was insane, pulled her card away, reached for her phone like she was going to call security. Then the lights flickered, and she was back at the entrance, no memory of our conversation, starting her loop again. 20 loops. 25. I was starting to panic, genuinely believing I might be trapped here forever, living these 37 minutes for eternity. I thought about my life outside this store, my students, my apartment, my family in Oklahoma. Would they wonder what happened to me? Would time be passing normally out there while I aged and died in this grocery store, repeating the same walk through the same miles forever? On the 33rd loop, I decided to break the pattern completely. Instead of walking toward the dairy section, I sat down in the middle of the produce section. Just sat down on the floor, cross-legged, and refused to move. People walked around me, gave me strange looks, but I didn't care. I was going to wait it out, see what happened if I didn't complete the sequence. I sat there for what felt like half an hour, watching my watch tick forward. 6:18, 6:19, 6:20. The store continued around me. New people came in, others left. The loop seemed to be breaking, time moving forward naturally. Relief flooded through me. Maybe I'd figured it out. Maybe staying still was the key. Then, at 6:55 p.m., the lights flickered again. I was back in the produce section, standing up, basket in hand. 6:18 p.m. on my watch. I almost broke down there, almost started screaming. But suddenly, the math teacher, made me stop thinking. There had to be a pattern I was missing, some variable I hadn't accounted for. I went through it methodically. The loop always started at 6:18 p.m. in the produce section. It always reset when I touched the milk in the dairy section. Duration: exactly 37 minutes if I didn't touch the milk. The same people always present, always in the same positions. On loop 36, I tried something different. I walked to the dairy section, but instead of reaching for whole milk, I reached for skim milk, one refrigerator door over. My hand closed around it. Nothing happened. No flicker. No reset. My hands were shaking as I put the skim milk in my basket. I stood there for a full minute, waiting, but time kept moving forward. I walked to the bread aisle, grabbed a loaf, put it in my basket. Walked to the eggs, grabbed a dozen. Every step felt like walking through a minefield, waiting for the reset that would send me back. But it didn't come. I made my way to the checkout, paid for my groceries, and walked out into the parking lot. It was 6:43 p.m., 25 minutes after I'd entered the store. I'd lived through approximately 22 hours of subjective time, but only 25 minutes had passed in the real world. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, before I could drive home. When I got there, I checked everything obsessively. My phone, my computer, my calendar, making sure I was really out, really free. Everything seemed normal. Time was passing linearly again. I never went back to that 𝒏. I drive an extra 15 minutes to a different location now, even though it's inconvenient. I've tried to research whether anyone else has experienced something similar at that store, but I've found nothing. No reports, no stories, no acknowledgement that anything strange has ever happened there. But here's what keeps me awake at night. I don't know why whole milk triggered the loop but skim milk didn't. I don't know if the loop is still running in that store, if other people are getting trapped in it. I don't know if I truly escaped or if I'm still in some larger loop. Living out my life, waiting for the moment when everything resets and I find myself back in that produce section at 6:18 p.m. on Valentine's Day, 2021. Sometimes I catch myself doing the same routine, the same pattern of actions, and I have to stop and break it, do something different, just to prove to myself that I'm in control, that time is moving forward. I've become obsessed with variation, with never doing the same thing twice, with breaking any pattern before it completes. Because I know now that time isn't as stable as we think it is. That loops are possible, that you can get trapped in them, and that the universe doesn't care about your terror or your confusion. It just runs its program, over and over, until something changes. I changed something. I reached for the wrong milk. And maybe that's all that saved me. But I'll never know for sure if I'm really out, or if this is just a longer loop, a wider pattern I haven't recognized yet. And that uncertainty, that fundamental doubt about the reality of my existence, is something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. However long that life actually lasts. However many times I've already lived it. Story 5. The phone call from myself. My name is Sarah Chin, I'm 34 years old, and I work as a software engineer for a tech company in San Francisco. I'm telling you this because what happened to me involves technology, or at least it started that way, and I need you to understand that I'm someone who understands how technology works. I debug code for a living. I understand systems, logic, cause and effect. What happened to me in November 2022 violated every principle of reality I thought I understood. It was November 3rd, a Thursday afternoon around 2:30 p.m. I was working from home, sitting at my desk in my apartment in the Mission District, trying to solve a particularly frustrating bug in our authentication system. My phone rang, the screen lighting up with an incoming call. No caller ID, just a number I didn't recognize. Usually, I don't answer unknown numbers, but I was expecting a call back from our IT department about some server issues, so I picked up. Hello? Sarah, listen to me very carefully. You need to leave your apartment right now. Don't ask questions, don't pack anything, just leave. You have less than 5 minutes. The voice on the other end was female, urgent, terrified. And it sounded exactly like me. Not similar, not close. Exactly like my voice, with the same slight rasp I have from childhood asthma, the same cadence, the same everything. My blood went cold. Who is this? It's you. I'm calling from 3 hours in the future, and Sarah, you need to trust me. There's going to be an earthquake. A big one. Your building is going to collapse. You need to get out now. I should have hung up. Should have dismissed it as a prank, maybe AI voice cloning, something explainable. But there was something in that voice, in my voice, that carried absolute conviction. Terror and certainty mixed together in a way that bypassed all my rational thoughts. How is this possible? I asked, my hand already reaching for my keys. I don't know. I don't understand it either. All I know is that I got this same call 3 hours ago, and I didn't listen. I thought it was fake. And then the earthquake hit, and I was trapped under the rubble for 2 hours before they pulled me out. And then my phone rang, and I was on the other end of this call, talking to myself from 3 hours earlier. Sarah, I know this sounds insane, but you need to leave. Now. I was already moving, shoving my laptop into my bag, grabbing my phone charger. What else? What else should I know? Don't go to Dolores Park. I know that's where you'll think to go because it's open space, but there's a gas line rupture on 18th Street. Go to Mission High School, the football field. You'll be safe there. And Sarah. Her voice cracked, my voice cracked, and I heard myself crying on the other end. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what's about to happen. I'm sorry I didn't believe me when I called. Wait, if you're calling me from 3 hours in the future, and you got the same call, then who called you? Where does this loop start? There was silence on the other end. Then, I don't know. I've been asking myself the same thing. Maybe it doesn't start. Maybe it just is. The call ended. I looked at my phone screen. Call duration, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Unknown number. I screenshot it, some instinct telling me to document everything. I ran out of my apartment, down the stairs, out onto the street. It was a beautiful day, clear blue sky, temperature in the mid-60s, people walking around in t-shirts, enjoying the sunshine. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. I walked quickly toward Mission High School, about 6 blocks away. Every step, I kept expecting to feel the ground shake, kept waiting for the buildings around me to start crumbling. But nothing happened. 2:35 p.m. 2:40 p.m. 2:45 p.m. I reached the school, walked onto the football field, and stood there in the middle of the empty field, feeling ridiculous. A few students were practicing on the track. A groundskeeper was mowing grass at the far end. Normal afternoon activities. I checked my phone obsessively, watching the time tick forward. 2:50 p.m. Nothing. 3 p.m. Nothing. 3:15 p.m. Still nothing. I started to relax, started to convince myself it had been an elaborate prank. Maybe someone I knew, playing a sick joke. Maybe AI voice cloning was more advanced than I realized. I sat down on the bleachers, feeling the adrenaline drain away, leaving me exhausted and embarrassed. Then, at exactly 3:22 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. Same number as before. My hands were shaking as I answered. Hello? Sarah? Oh my God, Sarah, you're alive. You made it out. It was my voice again, but different this time. Relieved, crying, overjoyed. Who is this? What's happening? It's still me. It's you. But from later. Sarah, the earthquake happened. 3:15, magnitude 7.2. My building collapsed. But you got out. I'm calling to tell you that you need to stay away from the Mission District for the next week. There are going to be aftershocks, fires, gas explosions. Stay north of Market Street. Stay safe. But there was no earthquake. I said, my voice rising. I've been sitting here for half an hour. Nothing happened. The ground didn't shake. The buildings didn't fall. You're lying, this is fake. I don't know what you want, but... Check the news, she said, my voice said. Right now. Check any news source. I pulled my phone away from my ear, opened my browser, went to the San Francisco Chronicle website. The homepage loaded, and my vision tunneled. Breaking, massive earthquake strikes Bay Area. Magnitude 7.2 quake hits at 3:15 p.m. Buildings collapse in Mission District. Casualties unknown. I scrolled down, and there was a photo. My apartment building, or what was left of it. A pile of rubble, rescue crews swarming, dust still settling in the air. No, I whispered. No, this isn't real. I would have felt it. I'm 6 blocks away. I would have felt the earthquake. I don't know why you didn't. My voice said on the phone. I don't understand any of this. All I know is that I'm alive, you're alive, because I got that first call and I'm making this second call. I don't know how many calls there are. I don't know if this loops forever or if it ends. But you're safe, and that's all that matters. Where are you calling from? I demanded. If you're me from the future, where are you right now? I'm at Mission High School. Standing on the football field. Same place you are. But 3 hours from now. I stood up, looking around the field. Empty except for the students on the track, the groundskeeper in the distance. I don't understand. If you're me from the future, and you're here, then where am I? Where's my future self? You're everywhere, she said softly. Every version of you that got the call and listened. We're all here, all existing simultaneously, all safe because we listened to ourselves. Time isn't linear, Sarah. Not anymore. Not for us. The call ended. I sat back down on the bleachers, my entire understanding of reality crumbling worse than any earthquake. I pulled up the news again, refreshed it, and watched as the casualty numbers started coming in. Dozens dead, hundreds injured, thousands displaced. My building had housed 48 units. I knew my neighbors. I knew their names, their lives, their routines. And I'd escaped because I'd gotten a phone call from myself, warning me of something that I hadn't even experienced. Over the next few days, I watched the earthquake dominate the news. I went to shelters, looking for survivors from my building, and found 17 people who'd made it out. I asked each of them if they'd gotten a phone call, a warning, anything unusual. None of them had. They'd survived by luck, by not being home, by being in structurally sound parts of the building. Only I had gotten the call. I obsessed over it. I checked my phone records, but the number that called me didn't exist. Not unlisted, not private, literally did not exist in any database I could access. I tried calling it back multiple times. It never connected, just gave me an error tone that didn't match any standard error message. I contacted physicists, people who study time and quantum mechanics. Most dismissed me immediately. 2 took me seriously enough to listen, and both admitted they couldn't explain it. One suggested quantum entanglement, somehow my consciousness becoming entangled with my future self. Another suggested a closed time-like curve, a loop in space-time. But neither could explain the mechanism, how a phone call could travel backward through time, or why it happened to me. 3 weeks after the earthquake, I got another call. Same unknown number. I answered immediately. Hello? Sarah, it's you. I'm calling from 2 years in the future. December 2024. I need to tell you something important. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. Stop looking for answers. Stop trying to figure out how this works. There are some things that aren't meant to be understood, and this is one of them. The more you investigate, the more unstable it becomes. The timeline is already fractured, and pulling at the threads is only going to make it worse. What do you mean, worse? What happens? I can't tell you. Knowing the future changes it, and some changes are catastrophic. Just trust me. Live your life. Be grateful you survived. And if you ever get another call from yourself, listen. Always listen. The call ended before I could ask more questions. That was 2 years ago. I haven't gotten another call since. I stopped investigating, stopped trying to understand. I moved to a different part of the city, changed jobs, tried to build a new normal. But I keep my phone charged and with me at all times. I always answer unknown numbers. And I live with the knowledge that somewhere, somehow, in some version of reality, I'm still making that first call, warning myself to run, creating a loop that may never end. I don't know how many versions of me exist now, scattered across time, all saved by the same warning. I don't know if I'm the original Sarah or just one iteration in an infinite chain. I don't know if time is broken or if it was never as fixed as we believed. All I know is that I'm alive because I listened to myself, and that somewhere in the future, I'll make that same call to the past, completing a circuit that has no beginning and no end. The universe glitched, and I became the glitch. And I'm still here, still waiting for the next call, still wondering if reality is as solid as it seems, or if we're all just voices on a phone line, calling backwards and forwards through time, trying to save ourselves from disasters we've already lived through. My phone is ringing as I write this. Unknown number. I think I need to answer it.